to the second hour of the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer. And my special guest today has been Michael Anderle, and he's going to be with us for this next hour. Bass, do you mind playing a little bit for us?
No.
Thank you. Here is Sebastian Messer, everybody playing some live music. Thanks, Bass. That's so awesome. And Darlene and Terry sent a message saying that they really enjoyed your playing. So that's so awesome. So this first hour I was talking with Mike Anderle, and we've been talking a lot about publishing and like the early days of the 20 books to 50K. So thanks a lot, Mike, for hanging out with us on the second hour. How's it going for you?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
Yeah, pretty good, man. Pretty good. I know it's crazy, and I could go on all day about the different resources that I've learned and felt like I've improved with just being part of the 20 books to 50K, watching what you do, watching what Craig does, watching what the other authors do, and I think you started asking me last hour, like maybe like could I share something that has I've learned or since hitting the publish button or whatever, and I can say, because my background's in business and leadership, I'm a process guy. I like to, understand, okay, well, this is what, I need to do in order to get to, this or whatever, or to the next level. And with publishing and writing, it's challenging because there's no, even though there's a formula and saying, hey, these are the steps, there's no there's no guarantee that even if you follow all those steps that you're going to be able to have success, because there's a lot of different factors in it. But not following the steps is definitely a thing, because there's some folks that they just kind of throw stuff out there and they see what sticks to the wall or whatever, and they might have moderate success or, whatever, but they can't replicate it. So you guys bring up the topic sometimes of folks that you've known that they had a runaway hit. The first book was like a runaway hit, and then they kind of just phased out because they didn't know how to replicate that. They didn't know how to, replicate success. And so I think that's one of the things that I've learned that, I haven't had, I haven't had the level of success that I want with my publishing, but I keep plugging away at it. I keep working at it, and I keep learning daily. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I can say since, hitting the button and saying, hey, put this out there to the universe, put this out there to the world, learning, and not just learning, but taking action. I've been writing and working on my back catalog, but I've also been working on, learning skill sets. So one of the things that I do is I check the 20 books to 50K group daily. I'm also doing one of Mark Dawson's classes that Susie Quinn had, the SPF. That's the self-publishing formula, everybody. It's a class called the bestseller thing. And I'm trying to, okay, these folks are offering different things on how they were successful. So if it works for them, and, I feel like I'm a halfway decent writer, maybe what I need to do is some of the other process stuff. So that's something that's been a big thing for me is just trying to, learn the ends of the industry, like you're talking about with the 20 books to 50K. These are folks in the industry. And then, I would consider you and Craig, you guys are, with and not just you, but I say you and Craig, but I mean like the whole team. You know what I mean? I know your wife is part of that and all that, but I mean like the 20 books to 50K team. You guys
Yeah, we have
are,
a lot of admins and everyone who are supportive and helpful,
yeah,
and if without them, this group would not run as smoothly as it does. They just would not.
right. I look at you guys as industry leaders of like, okay, how do they operate? How do y'all do things? And what's considered, professional, and what's also considered like, okay, this is like trending in the industry, and these are the things, on top of the necessary like meat and potato skills. These are the other things that, okay, this is what we need to, work on. Or for me personally, I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, what can I do that I'm lacking in? Where can I get, to that 80% level so that I can skill stack to the next
Hmm.
skill? You know what I mean?
And I actually completely understand. I'm not sure there was a question in there, or if you just want me to talk.
Oh no, I was kind of going off of like your question for me the last hour. I didn't really answer you.
Okay.
I was
Okay.
just wanting to kind of share with like, what I've gotten out of, the 20 books to 50K group and publishing. So, but
Yeah.
I guess, to kind of piggyback off of that, was that part of the idea when you did, like I know you said you had your reader group and whatever, but was that kind of like the idea, or is that something that kind of developed over time where, you're like, okay, well, this is a big investment of my time to share with other people, was that something that you decided that you guys wanted to do, or, because I mean,
No. So for my personality is to give.
yeah,
Period. When I was seeing a lot of success, and we aren't. You're talking pretty radical success at that time. This is once again back at the end of 2015, and to have someone go from nothing to 5 figures a month in the space of 90 days was really kind of unheard of at that time. Since then, a lot of people who've learned from 20 books can come out of the gate and make 10 figures or 5 figures in 1 month. But they have all of the history and they've done all of the studying. I mean, it takes some of these people 6, 9 months,
hmm
12 months of study and effort to pull it off. And in my case, I was, doing it from scratch because I never looked at anything in the industry before I published. I had my own skill sets that was going on, but I didn't think, for example, oh, hey, I could actually go find if there's indie podcasts, which I didn't know about. So as soon as I found out about them, such as Stephen Campbell's Author Biz, I just started religiously listening to them, whether I was taking a shower, what it was, if I was in the car, it didn't matter. It was a sponge for soaking up more information. And all of that is available now and available at such a high level that it's really compelling. So, for building like LMBPN itself, once again, the first year was only me.
yeah,
So, we had built LMBPN based on my books to a 6 figure a month company in 12 months.
that in
And so,
itself is a really astonishing feat, because it, like you said, this was not easy. I mean, you didn't just do it
no,
overnight. Uh,
I think I calculated that I had 2 days of vacation in like 3.5 years.
wow.
I loved what I did. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
So most of it didn't feel like work. And when you're moving from new opportunity to new opportunity, it's its own level of energy that it supplies. Our sons were started off like sophomore when I started this. So you're not talking. We didn't have babies. We
Right.
didn't have toddlers who needed to go to baseball. Most of them were already going into their latter years of their high school. So we certainly had football games and different things. I was a stay-at-home. My company was at home. I was the stay-at-home person, and Judith was working full-time, traveling the world for her job. So it
Wow.
was a different dichotomy of what was going on at that time. So, people need to really take stock and understand, don't ever compare yourself to somebody else.
Yeah.
Only compare yourself to yourself,
Well, that
and then
brings me up.
take advice of what can occur. Don't listen to the people who go, writers never make anything. I'm like, really?
That brings me to
Yeah.
the kind of circling back, when the last hour you were talking about you tried different businesses as an entrepreneur
Hmm.
and failed, and I've done that too. I mean, I failed quite a few times of stuff that I tried to do as a startup or whatever. Um, how did you parlay those failures into this, success with your books? Because it's one thing to have a really interesting story and that people like, but it's another thing to publish and have a business with it. And you were doing everything yourself, you and your wife, You know,
In this case, it was just me. She was
okay, so it was you.
working. She didn't join the company until a couple of years ago.
Okay, so how was that
Three.
like with those early days? You know, you went from, like you said, I think the third day you said you sold like 90, you made like 97 cents.
97 cents.
Yeah,
Yes, it was a killer day that day.
yeah. What was that like? I mean, you know, how did you kind of change that and say, okay, wait a minute, this is a real thing that's happening right now? How did you do that?
One of it is to recognize, like you said, all of the things that we've learned, Adam, related to the businesses we worked on and we failed at. We have learned something from them. No different than Edison, or not Edison, but well, actually, it might have been Edison, right? 10,000 ways to not make a
Yeah,
light bulb.
yeah, yeah.
We knew 10,000 ways this stuff shouldn't be done. And so when I looked at it, I said, okay, one of the things that really challenges a small business is having to use or work with, honestly, employees. Well, guess what? A book will never call in sick. A book is never going to have issues. It's just going to be there and available. It's a product that you can build. You don't have to invest $100,000, for example, into let's say a franchise, and then now you're $100,000 in debt, amongst other things. You can actually bootstrap. And to your point, we have a video that Kevin did last November talking about bootstrapping your business. How to do it at the least amount of money possible so that the first income is something you can actually use. There are books out there, how to self-edit. If you can afford editing, fantastic. If you can't, there's a book on how to do it.
Yeah.
Get a quality edit, either you or somebody else, whatever you need to do, but you can bootstrap this business. And then you look at different things. For instance, I understood if you have a successful series, dig deeper, do more, give your customers what they want. In this case, give the readers more of my stories. Even if I'm personally bored to tears with that series, figure out how to get excited about it again, because that's what the customers and the fans want. And I would watch successful indie authors who had a successful series break out somewhere around books 3 to 5 seems to be a really compelling time for people to go, bright, shiny, let me go write that. And when they come back, the fan base is gone.
Okay.
What was really taking them from new height to new height to new height, they went to go read something else, because you're really at that point, you're catering to what I call whale readers. My definition of whale readers, and what I pushed out back in 2016, was a person who reads at least a book a week. Since I've learned that there are readers who go 2 to 3 books a day, going, really, a week? That's all?
Crazy. That is crazy. I mean, I thought I was an avid reader until I discovered that because I read every day, but I mean, I don't consume a book every day. I mean,
yes.
Some shorter books I might read in a day or two. Because some of the like nonfiction stuff, is going to be at maybe 150 or 200 pages, maybe. But
right.
I definitely am not a whale reader.
No, there's so many different ways to end up making money. I often ask people, what is your mountain? What is it you want to attain? For some authors, they would like to attain a literary award. That's their goal. That's the mountain they would like to climb. Well, the strategy to go that route and what you have to learn and where you have to get involved is so radically different than, say, my mountain. My mountain is create stories that fans want to reread and to make money. I actually wanted to be paid for this thing that I'm doing.
That's what I want too, Mike. And the interesting thing, because you're talking about like authors will have that new shiny, and they're like, oh, this new idea or whatever. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle at one point killed off Sherlock Holmes. Remember?
Mistake.
And his fans were so upset, so livid, and I read something that he was kind of jealous of the fame of Sherlock Holmes, that his other stories weren't reaching the same success, so he killed off Sherlock Holmes, and he ended up having to bring Sherlock Holmes back because the readers, they wanted more Sherlock Holmes. And so like when you're talking about that, it just reminded me of that. And I had a communication, like an English teacher, but a communication arts class in college, and the Dr. David Taylor, he said, you have to think about your audience first, and he would say, for the reader, he'd say, give them what they want, give it to them real good. And I love that, because here's an English professor with a PhD, using broken English on purpose to kind of relate the point, saying, hey, if your readers want that, give them that thing. You just hit
It's
that on the head
interesting.
again too. You're like, that's another, it's kind of like a staple, So how with that,
Isn't that true for musicians?
I think so too. I was just thinking about bands, like, how usually the first two albums are kind of like, the produced stuff, and you get to the third or fourth album and it's like, kind of different from anything that you expected from them.
Well, I remember one time back in the 80s, I was listening to a heavy metal band. And in the 90s, early 90s, and I get why they do it, because they get bored with a certain genre.
Mm-hmm.
But they so radically departed the genre from the previous album, I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
You're not really giving me what I know you for.
Yeah.
And I can respect you wish to go do it, but don't expect me to come along with you for the ride.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the spaghetti incident, and I was like,
Yes. Oh, that is such a good example.
I was like, what
I'm
in the
looking
world?
at the cover.
Yeah.
I'm like, excuse me, this is nasty.
Yeah,
Nothing,
Guns N' Roses, y'all. I was like, I mean, I was expecting, like, you remember Use Your Illusion Part 1 and 2, and, oh my gosh. And then the spaghetti incident, I was like, what? Wait a minute, what is this?
Yeah, that should have given, in hindsight, it's a perfect example of, well, this is going to explain the future.
Yeah, yeah. And I think with even back then, kind of pre-internet or early internet days, you didn't have such a fast movement with. Today, everything's lightning fast. If you have, I don't know, say for instance, if you have a book that comes out, in the series that you're working on, and it doesn't meet those reader expectations, it's not going to work out well for you.
But you can redo it, right? You can re-edit it. You can change the stories. You can recover it. You can pull it. What a lot of people don't realize is that once you've done a project, you don't have to leave it alone. Not anymore.
Yeah.
You can pull it back. And so we actually do that within LMBPN. We will recover. Right now, we are working to recover 24 books.
Wow.
3 series of 8, and we're going to recover them. And, new graphics, new blurbs, new content in the first 8 books. So we're retooling something we did 2 years ago. We know more now.
Yeah.
We know, for instance, what the fans really liked. So we're going to give them new 8,000 to 10,000 short stories in the books for any new readers to come along. And of course, the old readers have a chance to read them if they'd like. And we'll end up packaging those stories together eventually when we get it. But, you can continue to work your backlist forever.
Yeah. Hold that thought for a second, Mike. Everybody, you're listening to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. I think that's an interesting idea, because I know a couple of traditionally published authors, and talking about reworking something or whatever. It's kind of like what I've noticed with them is that when it's done, that's it. It's like, this is the way it's going to be, unless the book really takes off and, maybe it has like a 10-year anniversary, or they might have a movie or something like that. And they're like, oh, maybe we'll give a new cover. But for indie authors, I have seen people not only just take the old book off the market, but they'll take the story and they'll rebrand it into like a whole different series. And so I don't really understand that as much. I mean, could you kind of give some insight on it? Like the whole rebranding of so for example, like I did this thing called the Savannah Vampire Novel Series, and it's a vampire. It's like a little vampire story. Like they would take that and say, okay, well, it's not doing really well with whatever. And they would take the guts of the story, and then they'd rework it into a different whole new series. And I've seen that a couple times with different folks. And I've never really understood, other than trying to like capture new readers, I've never really understood that whole idea.
All right, so let's go through it from a little piece. When you're looking at the trad pub, do remember that whenever they put something into print, it costs a lot of money to do that.
Right.
We're not hampered by those restrictions anymore. Indie isn't, because we're digital first. We've come up through the trenches knowing that we can change this. And in fact, Amazon, the biggest of the digital distributors, encourages you to fix your document. So if somehow or another you got one particular fact wrong and enough fans tell you, hey, you put this particular mountain over here in this country, it's actually the one next to it. Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Well, if enough people flag that, Amazon will tell you, go fix that.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Okay.
so, you'll get it in your dashboard and they're like, hey, go fix this. And it doesn't take much. It probably takes 10 minutes to go fix it in the book, re-upload it, and let Amazon reprocess it in 4 days. And now you have a better product. So even the whole infrastructure encourages it now, whereas it did not encourage it before. Get it right the first time. And a lot of those trad authors, if they can get their rights back, there's nothing stopping them from doing the same thing, except not knowing how to do it.
Right.
That part is true.
Right.
And so, we move forward with that. But on the covers, if, the last time I looked on Criterion, probably impressions. Now, impression could be one time to one person, or it could be 50 times to a person. But we've probably paid 40 to 50,000 or million impressions with a particular book cover. Well, guess what? We've lost the low-hanging fruit. They've seen the cover enough times. It didn't jazz them. So why wouldn't I change the cover? It's one of the most compelling aspects of marketing your book.
Well, I wasn't asking about the cover per se. I was saying like they would actually do the whole series over, like the same story, but call it like a new series.
So there are a few different things. Let's say that you find out that a lot of people like your series, but they don't like the cursing. A lot of adults will read YA, not because they want to necessarily go with teens, but they understand that YA is almost no cursing and it's no sex, and it's a cleaner genre.
Oh, okay.
So they will actually go. So let's pretend that you did a vampire series that was very Anita Hamilton, lots of open door sex. And you go, you know what? I did that because I chased after that trope. That's not me. I'm going to redo this. I'm ripping out the sex. I'm going to add a new arc inside of it because people have told me they love this secondary character, even though to me they weren't a big deal. So I'm going to up the scenes with that character, and now I'm going to rebrand it because, well, it's not an adult P&R, right? And
it's not actually the same story though either, right?
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
Yeah. See, that makes sense because I was like, and I've seen it mostly with like romance authors that I know. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I really never understood why, but that does, I give an example. This is kind of really crazy world type thing. As a new author, I also wanted to put out an anthology, right? So I'm working with like 12 authors, and on this horror anthology that's will be coming out later on the year. Well, one of the authors, and this is my fault, but I did not specify that I didn't want sexually graphic material in this book. All right. I didn't specify that, but I had an author that their first draft, had some sexually explicit material, not pornographic, but, just sexually explicit. And so I had that conversation with the author and I said, hey, it's my fault. I didn't really do that. And I told the author, I was like, hey, this would work for like another type of book, but the kind of readers that I'm looking at, I don't want to, I don't want to have stuff in there that's going to trigger somebody to say, I don't want to read this anymore. Right. And so it's interesting that you talk about that because there are going to be, I didn't think about that, but there are going to be people that they like to read YA stuff because they don't want the graphic, and the gore and that other stuff. And then there's going to be folks that want that and they're looking for, the adult, 18 plus type stuff. And I don't mean necessarily, adult porn or content like that. I'm just mean like they want more mature content, Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
understand that.
Yeah, I didn't. I actually never understood that as why that would be. So I'm glad you cleared that up. So like with the covers, like you said, more now. Like a couple years have passed. More. Folks have seen those impressions. The people that that are those kind of readers that didn't really pick up on that book. You're looking at trying to re-up the interest level, or maybe like saying, hey, this, we know that this is the kind of book that you like. We've we've grown a little bit in the last couple of years. You might want to check it out. So what was that process like? In kind of growing and moving forward with the same series, but updating and kind of giving some new polish to the covers and all.
My cynical side says it was expensive. Here's an example that actually does use Craig. He and I put out a collaboration for the Terry Henry Walton Chronicles, and originally it was going to be male focused. Craig Marine, his main character was a Marine. He was taking one of the characters from the Arthurian Gambit, expanding upon it, and then he added he was halfway finished with book 1, and we're talking, and I remember where I was. I'm like, oh my goodness, Craig, we forgot to add a major female character to this.
Oh, okay.
Because our readership is 60-40 female to male, which is not that radical actually for most people, except for authors who focus on male books. So I'm like, we don't have a female character in this. We need to do something. And by we, I meant you.
Okay.
You, Craig, need to do something.
You're like, we, and I mean you.
Yes, exactly. We came up with this idea, meaning me, you, in the fact that we messed this up. We meaning I messed this up. So anyway, long story short, we already had a certain set of covers coming out that were going to compellingly work this way. And even though we were purchasing covers, we were getting covers made for the books as he was writing them. He was writing them fast. Mm-hmm. We were having to go and hire actor or models to create a new set of covers. So we knew these covers we're buying today are only going to be on here for 8 weeks.
Okay. So you already had an idea that it'd be a temporary thing.
Oh yeah, but we had to keep going. And we've done things like I mentioned before, we're rebuilding 28 new covers.
Wow.
That's not inexpensive to go, okay, well, kiss that goodbye.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting too, because to say 28 covers,
and 24, my bad.
Well, 24,
no,
28, the same area, whatever. It's kind of like some folks are listening thinking like, wow, I don't even have 3 books out, And so what would you say to somebody like that? Because, those kind of challenges that you have are going to be different than, someone who's like entry level or mid level. I'll tell you that. How can they scale that up?
Well, here, imagine, if you will, that you're me 3 years ago, and you realize I'm planning at that time. I had this idea that I'm going to try to shoot for 400 new books in a year.
What? This is 400 books in a year? A lot of publishers don't really do that.
True, right. Even this is no quid pro quo, but Bain probably puts out maybe 80 books a year, 90 books a year.
Yeah.
And we were going to shoot for. Now, we didn't hit it. That was actually last year was our effort to do it. And we did about 340-ish, somewhere in there. And so, but go back in time and realize that for every cover at that level that I spend $100 more covers, $34,000.
Yeah.
Now at the time I was looking at $40,000, but and you realize I need to understand how to find really great covers for a really inexpensive price. Mm-hmm. No different than the person who has 3 covers and doesn't have a budget. So this is how I did it.
Yeah.
I would go to the the pre-builts, right? The cover websites where you could actually go and look at all of the pre-built covers. I would look through until I find an artist who has a style I liked, and I would look at the price of their pre-builts, and I would go, I can't afford that. Mm-hmm. So I can, because some of them are $400 or $500 a book cover.
Oh yeah.
So that's pre-mades, and if pre-made is that, then getting them to do a special cover is going to be on top of that. So I would go and find until I found the people who would do the quality of the cover I like at the budget I could afford.
See, I think that's smart.
Reach out to them.
I think that's smart because you use what you have, even though you might not have all the resources that you need. You use the resources and become resourceful, at any level.
Yes.
I think that's definitely a key to success for anybody. Is become resourceful. So like even you have a 30. Somebody says, "Oh man, I've got a $40,000 budget to buy covers." I'm like, man, I don't even have $400 right now to buy covers. Somebody like that, they think like, okay, they can't understand that it's really the same kind of thing. It's just on a different scale. Well,
what I found out, like our average cover is $300 to $400 a cover.
Yeah.
The difference is that when I engage an author, or an artist, they understand that we have a certain built-in infrastructure that we're going to deliver a lot of covers, which means they don't have to find customers.
Volume, yeah.
They understand that when they're in our infrastructure, we respect them. We don't sit there and ask them for changes after changes.
Yeah.
If we go to too many changes, I'm like, you know what? Charge me for that cover. Let's try something else.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to waste their time, and they're going to get paid.
Yeah.
Quick.
All right.
Because I don't want them finding somebody else to go to do art for. I'd like to,
That's a great point. Hold that thought. We've got to do the station ID breaks real quick.
You bet.
Everybody, you're listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Gold Soul. And this is the Adam Messer Show. And my special guest today is Michael, a.k.a. Mike Anderle. And we've been talking about publishing and indie, being an indie author and all. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Senior Citizens Incorporated is looking for volunteer Meals on Wheels drivers. A few hours each week will connect some of our area's most vulnerable residents with nutritious food and a regular knock on the door. For more information, contact Laura at 912-964-5411.
Now you have a chance to support both Savannah Independent Artists and WRUU during this shelter-in-place order to stop the spread of COVID-19. Creatives in Need is a group of independent artists hosted by the Roots Up Gallery, which is collaborating with WRUU during this shelter-in-place to offer an online art gallery at www.rootsupgallery.com. For every work of art sold at this online gallery, the artists receive 80% from the sales and 20% goes to WRUU and its programs like Art on the Air. Interested listeners can go to www.rootsupgallery.com to start shopping today.
WRUU 107.5 FM is a new and different listener-supported and all-volunteer community radio station for Savannah. Our diverse broadcast and web programming is supported by generous listeners who value our passion and spunk. We are independent of other media and receive no government or large corporate support. People like you are the largest and most important source of our funding. Go to wruu.org to find out how you can make a one-time or monthly contribution. Thank you.
All right, everybody, and we are back. And just a shout out again, Mike. I know we do these station IDs in the middle and all. We ask people for donations. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for supporting WRUU. I mean, you didn't have to do that. You did it out of the kindness of your heart, and I really appreciate it. So thanks a lot, man. I really do appreciate that. It's been awesome.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Before the break, we were kind of talking about scale with challenges, like scaling up, scaling down, because I think that's a mindset hurdle that I've encountered talking with folks. Because I talk to, I talk to people that, like yourself, who are, the top of their game with the industry. I've talked to people like myself who are entry level and still new and trying to, move forward. But I think the difference with some folks is when and I see this a lot in some of the different author groups, and sometimes I see it with 20 books. You get somebody in there new or whatever, but there's this either someone has an abundance mindset or they have a I guess I don't know how to describe it, but like a negativity mindset, like there's not enough, right? And
yes,
like the pie, there's not enough pie for everybody versus there's pie for everybody, and so I think that's an interesting thing that you do, and Craig does in the group. What you do is you try to scarcity. I was trying to think of the word scarcity mindset. You try to show people like, okay, it's not good to have a scarcity mindset. It's better to have an abundance mindset because, Craig's always saying a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And the resources that you share for free, right? There are other folks out there who are trying to do the same kind of thing, but they're trying to charge people and say, oh, I could, if you do this and this and this, you're going to, have that, like I said earlier, the shovels and jeans folks. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but when you're doing this, this is what, the fourth year of the 20 books to 50K.
Mm-hmm.
What's kept you going with it? Why do you keep giving back? Because I know you said you're a giver, and obviously you are a giving person. But why keep doing this? Why? What keeps you guys going with it, and wanting to help new people coming in, even industry professionals, like you said. There's some traditional people that they don't know how to indie publish. What keeps you going with it?
I think part of it could be the desire to help people help themselves, because you recognize that it's not just one person you're helping. Yeah. You're helping their family. You're helping perhaps the family of the family. You're perhaps helping another artist that could be in Romania in 1 year when they hire them to do some covers for them. And you recognize, now going back to the scarcity mindset, I'd like to speak to that just for a minute. The challenge in book selling, now you might have a runaway bestseller, and let's use 50 Shades of Grey as an example. I'm unaware of a large amount of people believing that 50 Shades of Grey was a literary classic. I'm unaware of that.
Right.
But you know what? How many people, just ask yourself the question, how many people read 50 Shades of Grey and maybe they read another book too, because it got them into reading again?
Yeah.
I'm just posing the question. So that rising tide of a book that maybe some other authors give a lot of grief to, provided them a reader or two or 20, especially if you're in the romance genre, probably 500. It created a whole trope-filled, experience, and it brought money into them. Mm-hmm. And so you never know. So here's another one. Let me take another scarcity mindset. If a person knows what lit RPG is, and it's literary role-playing game, the idea is you're taking a lot of the things that people love with role-playing games, usually MMORPGs, and applying it to a literary or a fictional story. This is relatively new, kind of brought over from the Russians, to be frank. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, certainly, you might argue a few stories that were different, okay? But I don't want to get into the particulars of this. My point is, 20 years ago, if someone had a scarcity mindset and they were playing MMORPGs and they had just decided, you know what, I'm going to go into this new genre. That genre has made millionaire literary fiction writers.
That's incredible.
I can point to a few of them.
That's
that didn't
incredible.
Exist 20 years ago. It didn't exist to speak of 10 years ago.
I honestly didn't even know that was a genre. I've heard of the show The Guild. And
you go.
There's another web series that I like to watch. I can't remember the name of it, but they do skits on like questing, and man, it's so funny. Like, it is so funny, and I didn't really know that was actually a genre. I'm about to check it out.
The question the question I have is, how can you explain that there's a scarcity mindset whenever there's brand new genres being created, and this one was created over in Russia?
Yeah.
You cannot. I can argue that 7 different ways to Sunday. One of the griefs that I received for writing Arthurian Gambit is because it was successful, and a lot of people are like, it's vampires in space. Well, technically it's not, but whatever. And so I've asked myself over the years, why did they question that? Why was that the big hang up? Was it because that it was successful and they were upset about that? Was it because I used vampires, which is a very common trope, by the way? It's perennial. I mean, people love vampire stories forever.
Yeah.
And I just happened to mix it in a way I wanted to read about it. And it resonated. Now, there's other reasons it resonated, but that's much longer than we have to talk about. But my point being, if I had gone in with a scarcity mindset of there's already too many vampire books, where would I be today?
Yeah. Speaking of vampires, I met Bram Stoker's great-grandnephew, Dacre Stoker.
Oh, cool.
And he's actually going to be on the show next week because May 26th is Dracula Day.
Vampire Day.
Yeah.
Dracula.
So I love the vampire genre. That was one of the reasons why I decided I wanted to write my first fiction book. Was, it sounds kind of crazy, but you remember Lost Boys, the movie? It was just a vampire heavy metal band that ends up coming to Savannah and then goes on whatever. But yeah, I don't not that I don't understand why people question stuff, but sometimes I'm like, like you said with the 50 Shades of Grey, it might not be your thing that you enjoy, and I don't mean you personally, I'm just mean plural.
Right.
It might not be the thing that you enjoy, but you can't argue with success. You can't.
Oh, but they want to. They really want to.
And I don't
And
get
it
that.
speaks
It's like
more to them than it does the person who produced it.
Yeah, I just don't. I never could understand that, and I could never understand why somebody would try to take the. I mean, internet trolls, right? Why would somebody take the time out of their day to post something negative or argumentative?
It tells you more about them
Yeah.
than it does everybody else, and I'll just leave it there. It really
Yeah.
does. The more you do this, the more you worry about other people, the more you realize how debilitating and emotionally draining it is, and you don't have time for that. I'm not on Facebook or social media much at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot that I'm sure has been said about me, and I choose not to deal with it. I was like, why? What benefit? Here's an example. So I had an individual. I doubt seriously that they intended this to happen this way, but back when I was just getting successful, I was on the author biz, and somehow or another, on a particular blog, they wrote about me, and I was mentioning what I was having success with. And someone argues, he goes, well, yeah, he might have made $10,000 a month, but I'll believe it when he hits $50,000 a month. I'm like, all right.
What?
That what you want? So 6 months later, 7 months later, I'm hitting that amount.
Oh my
And I'm
gosh.
like, now what are you going to say? When I had 100,000 a month?
Yeah.
So the question is, I could do it. Now, if 6 months previous to that, they had been listening to me, maybe perhaps they would have had an opportunity to change their own lives. And they don't have to do what I do. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to change what I'm going to do in the future.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I mean, and like I said earlier, I think I joined a dozen or so groups just trying to find, because like I said, I'm a process guy, right? I like to know okay, these different things and parts and how they work and that kind of thing. And I joined so many different groups, and about a month or so ago, I just went through and left like almost every single group that I had been in. And it's not because they're bad groups or anything like that.
Many of them are helping others. No argument. They reach and they help they do help.
Yeah.
But it's just not for you.
Well, the thing I found was, and this is something I love about the 20 books to 50K group and what you've set up, and Craig and the group. What I found with these other groups were you were having people giving prescriptive advice.
Ooh,
and
I do not like that.
I don't either. And especially, kind of going back to, you can't argue with success. It's like, well, I saw people giving prescriptive advice and then they don't have anything to back it up. That they're giving advice to folks that they're like, they might be one step ahead of that person. And I'm like, you can't really do that. And so I just kind of removed myself from the groups, and what I've looked for is folks that are actually the doers, the people that are taking the action. And those are the kind of folks that I'm like, okay, I mean, there's a reason why I wanted to talk to you, the reason why I wanted to talk to Craig. I mean, you guys are industry leaders, you guys are the ones doing the things that, not just me, but there are a lot of us, I've got a whole community of friends here in Savannah, that we do like an indie. I've hosted an indie author convention the last 4 years. Bass, is that? And I've got a whole group of indie author friends, and I feel the same way about a rising tide lifts all boats. There's no limit on the pie. If I'm successful with what I'm doing, if you're successful with what you're doing, that doesn't infringe on each other. It can be mutually beneficial, and that it goes back to kind of like that abundance mindset of, okay, I'm not where I want to be. I have a goal of what I want to do. I'm sure even at your level, you have goals of, okay, well, I've reached this level, but there's other things that I want to do. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't go back and change the covers, right? I mean, you wouldn't have a reason to change those covers. You'd be like, okay, well, I hit this level and I'm done. I'm moving, whatever. There's, we all, I think at any level, and that's one of the things I want to share is like, I think at any level, people have, when they want to continually improve themselves, they set new goals. They continually work on things. They go and then they improve on, the process or, whatever. I've never paid for a cover because I make my own. But I know that my covers, I've improved those because studying and looking at what other people are doing. I mean, like this SPF bestseller class that I'm in, one of the first things that they talk about is your book packaging. I would have never thought about book packaging at first. I used to always do it like, okay, well, I've got this story. Now I need to get a cover. They're like, no. You need to think about what is this image that you're trying to put out there. So I think it's one of the interesting things about, being part of this community, getting, like, for example, me being able to talk to you right now is kind of like when you were talking about the feeling of talking to the big players and publishing coming to the 20 books to 50K, and I'm like, okay, that's how I feel right now. It's like, oh man, I'm getting to talk to, Mike Anderle and, getting to pick your brain about, stuff that I think it's kind of, it's strange, but people have access to so much on the internet, and they have so much availability, but kind of sometimes sorting through that is difficult, sometimes just, just talking with somebody and saying, or being able to listen to, like an audiobook, like we were talking earlier, or a podcast, just being able to listen to that. There might be something that somebody can take away from what you're talking about today that they can take away and apply to, their authorship today,
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool. I'd love the fact that, that's wanting that your impetus to keep doing the 20 books of 50K and the conventions and all these other things is your desire to help other people. I mean, because like we said earlier, you don't charge, like upscaling the prices. You charge cost.
Yeah. For instance, the 20 books is going to have to come to the Strip. I mean, we've outgrown Sam's. They cannot hold us in the hotel.
Yeah.
They can't hold us within the 2 hotels. So in order to keep it growing, we have to there are risks associated with doing this.
Yeah.
We have to mitigate those. I mean, we have to buy insurance. It was interesting. Last year, before 20 books, we had a connection with our CPA. That firm is based here in Las Vegas, but actually does it for some fairly major authors around at least the nation so far. And they were asking us to look over year, what's changing, because they're going to do that before the end of the year just to make sure that, like, have you considered this? And one of them was entertainment. They're like, you're really a lot lower in your entertainment. Judith and I looked at each other and said, no, we actually, 20 bucks is about to happen. We do a lot of entertaining during that week to engage with people and to make connections happen. And we're like, yeah, entertainment's fine. Just next.
Yeah.
So, but that's, part of that entertainment is also to change the mindset of people that are coming there so that they understand you are not the history of that person who had to get their own books printed and put it in the back of the car. And some of those people are amazing, by the way. If you go to Christopher Paolini, go back and study his experience with Aragorn. Go back and study it and find out what they did. So even then, it becomes a misnomer. But there's a lot of opportunity. I think that there's a lot of people who question themselves. They question maybe where they live or the color of their skin or whatever. And guess what? None of that matters. It matters the quality of your story.
Yeah, I agree. I think it all comes down to the story and work ethic, what people are willing to, work and do. And I know I said this earlier, but this has all come about in the last 5 years for you. This is something that you've built in the last 5 years. And the reason why I'm stressing that or emphasizing that so much is because some folks are like, they think it's unattainable, and I'm not saying that everybody that wants to be an author is going to be, like the next Mike Anderle. I'm not saying that. But if they want to do at what level that they want to do or go after whatever level that they want to go after,
you have to want what I have.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a horrible way. I mean that because for some people, the sheer thought of having to deal with this many people a day would cause them to say, no, thank you. No, thank you.
Right.
And that's good for them because there are authors who are making just as much money and it's just them. There are multiple strategies to accomplish what is going on.
I think the extra layer of what you're doing, like the conferences and the like like with the video stuff with Craig and you this last couple weeks or so. I think it's like up to like episode 80 or something like that, or somewhere around there.
I lost count.
Yeah,
I had all sorts of Chrome problems this week.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's, you know, you're setting new goals, and you know, like you say, you had an idea of the goal to publish 400 books, and then you're like, well, we didn't quite make that. You still put out, like you said, 340 books.
Yeah, it was one of those, you shoot for the moon, and if you fail, you still reach the stars.
I mean, 340 books. I mean, you know, I could never imagine publishing 340 books in my lifetime, let alone in a year. You know?
Yeah, it's funny because now we look at a normal month of 20 to 25 books minimum, and it's child's play for us.
That's crazy because, you know, you think about scale, it's
we
like,
did it.
Yeah, thinking like, man, 20 to 25 books a month. You know, and I'm working on my back catalog, and I'm like, okay, well, and you know, so like I'm in that stage right now where I'm talking about doing a series. I have an idea for a series, and I'm working on that. But I've
But that's fantastic. We're a company.
Mm-hmm.
You're a company of one. It's kind of like the Marines, you know, or Army of one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you are a company of one. We're a company that has a lot of people associated with doing different parts.
Yeah.
So there's no, it's like, I don't feel bad for not being able to be Ingram.
No. I mean, it's almost, to me, it's kind of like, you know, saying people should not, that just goes back to don't compare yourself to other people, you know, but you have to have goals. You have to metric and say, okay, I'm going to take action, you know.
I think the most important part for me, Adam, right there is recognize that there are no limits. If knowing that LMBPN can accomplish 400 books in a year allows you to dream big, fantastic.
Yeah.
There is no limitations. One individual tried to say that I shouldn't put out 12 books a year. I should limit myself to one a quarter. And I refused that encouragement. I was like, no, I can get bigger. I've already done it. Right? By the time they were telling me this, I'd already done 5 in 3 months.
Wow.
So telling me to go one a month only was not really going to work with my reality. And so
that kind of goes back to that prescriptive advice when somebody is that they're not doing what you're doing. They're trying to tell you how to do it. You know, it just doesn't make sense. It's like, why hate on you when you're doing it?
Pretty much. Yeah. And that's really kind of where it is, because I love to say #probably. This #probably won't work, but I've got stories that prove this wrong. This #probably will work, but I've got stories where it hasn't.
That's cool. Well, we've got like a couple minutes left, Mike, and I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Sure.
If you were to give somebody like just some kind of encouragement, like, you know, the listeners out there, you know, who they're wanting to be an author or they're whatever, what would you say is a good place for them to start? You know, some words of encouragement.
If you're looking to just get your words out to find out people reading, you don't have to go the Amazon route. You can go to so many different ways and create an opportunity. If you would like to make money from it, I don't see that changing anytime soon. There is no way to reach all of the market and you will be able to carve out a niche for yourself. It takes effort, granted, but I don't see that there's a lot different. If the people who said back in 2015, the gold days are gone, the 2011, 2012, when it was so simple, that's gone. And perhaps it was, but it was only gone for those people who were lazy, who didn't want to understand. If you realize that you're going to put out a good product, something you're happy with, and you're willing to learn where the mistakes are, your future is opportunistic.
I think that's a great way to wrap up the show, because, you know, what you're doing obviously shows that you're not just saying this to somebody. You know, you're not trying to say this is what you should do, A, B, C, but it also shows that, you know, you're living it, and, you know, you're doing this daily and working on this daily. And even at, you know, your level of success, that you are moving forward and doing what you want to do with your author career and your book, your publishing company. So I really appreciate you, Mike, being on the show today. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Likewise, Adam. I appreciate the honor.
All right, thanks a lot. Everybody, stay tuned, because up next is the Savannah at Night, folks. And if you just caught the tail end of this, podcast, part 1 and 2 with Michael Anderle, aka Mike, is going to be on the SavannahMuses.com website. It's going to be on Apple Podcasts and also on Libsyn. So if you want to tune in later on, you can tune in then. So thanks a lot, and stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You are listening to WRU